Mechanics. This is our second special crossover event. This one is regarding the Magical Technology course. Of course, introducing the magnificently beautiful, always spectacular NorieAnn Holly, alias Miss Merovingian. I am, of course, Donovan Neal, the host of Soul Mechanics, alias Dallas Tucker, several other names, Tanner Trenton Delaserio, Nelson Tyler, I think I've used before. But I have a lot of things I want to show you guys first from my adventures today. I found this thing, and it's full of old notes I had from when I was in my training with my spotter. So that's cool. That's something we can jump into at some point. I found what seems to be a functioning cellular telephone from like the 1800s in almost like perfect condition. Now, this is the one that's going to get you. Just lying around on the street in West Cleveland, I found this. I think it's like a dildo, but it's funny. I cleaned it off. Don't.
You did not.
My kitty's been playing with it, but maybe it's a pocket pussy. I don't know. It's funny.
You cleaned it off, but it still smells like pussy.
No, I didn't say it smells like pussy.
Well, your kitty's been playing with it. I mean, cats do have a certain smell.
That is an indication, huh? All right, so what we're going to be talking about here, I don't wear glasses. We're going to be talking about the soul mechanics theory behind magics and how they operate. Trying to bring everything together, really, because, again, that's our purpose here, is to bring everything into one consolidated factor under the title, or the working title, soulcasting. Bringing together spellcrafting, spellcasting, witchcraft, all sorts of magics, psychic abilities. I'm of the belief, we've spoken in Outcast Revolution how Mandy believes that there's a clear distinction between psychic abilities and magic abilities. I do not believe that. I think it's all the same thing, and I think it all works in the same way. Now, when we speak to shit like spot casting, one of the primary things that we use is putting cues in the environment. We set values in people's immediate environment that are going to, it's kind of like you set a certain value or a series of values in a pattern that's going to cause for them to kind of lock up in combination and build what essentially amounts to like a subroutine in a person's mind that will have a trigger attached to it. So pretty much implant thoughts in a person's mind, kind of like that movie Inception, where they have the idea that you put an idea in somebody's head, you put ideas in somebody's mind, and then later on you place something in the environment that triggers those ideas at a certain point in time and causes for their brain to act in a certain way.
It's like gaslighting.
that would be, the more sadistic measure of it, yeah. But and it can be used, spotcasting can be used very deviously. It's exceptionally effective. I've been using it this entire time, and people don't even know it's happening. But one of the things that we use a lot is going to be glyph works. That, like in magics, they have like here I have this book. Can't really see it because I can't feel it, but it's like a, what do they call them? A mandala notebook. It's just a bunch of mandala pictures that you can write on. And, these images, the brain has, if you look into the works of Carl Jung, you go into the ideology of the collective unconscious and such, wherein there is what seems to be a collective subconscious in humanity, as though we're all sharing the same mind, which, of course, in our understanding, we are all sharing the same mind. We're all living in the same soul. And so certain glyphs being combinations of symbols and such, they're going to have meanings that the brain identifies. The brain knows what these things mean when it sees it, whether you know it or not. Some part of your DNA, stored in the memory of your DNA, stored in the memory of your brain. There's going to be relationships formed that understand what these patterns mean, understand what certain values are meaning to say. And so it's kind of like, as I've stated before, hypnotizing a person. It's like presenting something that they don't immediately understand what it is for the most part, unless they're trained in this, they're studied in this. But it's going to slip through and get into their brain and cause for their brain to react in a certain way. Now, of course, the idea being that the brain is what's manipulating the laws of attraction. So their subconscious is the operating system of their person. And when you trigger certain effects in a person's subconscious, the brain's going to respond by creating certain things in their life and their environment. And so basically what you're doing with spotcasting is tricking people into creating things that you would like for them to. And as I said, this can be used for devious measures, but for the most part, we use it to try and give people beneficial pathways and avenues. Such, help them out in certain ways, relieve them of stresses, anxieties, and motivate them. Essentially, that's what the initiative was started for, to motivate people and to inspire. But I would like to speak here on what Norie thinks about this general theory as it stands.
Well, I think the power of suggestion is one of the strongest powers that we as humans can understand or know or utilize. Lots of people will combat me and my natural abilities because many people, if you don't possess any psychic ability and you have never known anyone with psychic ability, it is of course in your nature to be skeptical and even delusional about the fact that it can exist. There are lots of people who won't read a horoscope, and I am one of those people. The horoscopes that are published throughout our country are completely wrong. I mean, I studied them for months trying to figure out where they were getting these ideas from. You can get your actual horoscope by looking at planetary alignments, but the power of suggestion is so strong. If I was to say, Donovan, today's going to be a very bad day, you're going to make a connection at work that will be all wrong for you, you're going to lose money, you will have that in your mind so much. If you don't create that, you will automatically assume that you missed something and it actually happened. Once a person plants that idea, that suggestive idea in your head, you don't even really have to trust that person. Like, a lot of people think that voodoo will only work if the person believes in it. That's not entirely true, because most people who do voodoo are doing it on a person who has no idea. But the power of suggestion is very real, and until something is brought to our attention, for the most part, we remain completely ignorant to it.
Yeah, I heard a story recently about, I'm going to post it for the Remnants for one of the stories of the day, actually. A story about this dude who grew up in the kind of Santeria culture, and this woman he met could cast people. She was a voodoo practitioner, and she could cast, like, death spells on people and shit, seriously, and get people killed. That didn't even know what was happening, that had nothing to do with it. In fact, likely would never have even believed it was real. And, obviously we can't prove that the guy's story is true or not. He's a comedian, actually, but, I mean, it's a valid point to make. These sorts of things do happen. A lot of what's said about voodoo, really, particularly, is actually true. The stuff about zombie powder and such, that's a real thing. And it's a really creepy, weird thing, but it is a real thing. They can actually animate dead bodies with this whatever it is. It's like, I want to say like iocane powder from like The Princess Bride. I can't remember what it's called, but they can give it to people and cause for people to just completely lose their sense of presence and free will and be like autonomous zombies. And they can animate dead animals, cause for the animals to have electrical impulses in their body that'll cause for them to move around and shit. So it's not like the movies, it's not like Hollywood, but it's all based on real shit. It's all everything.
Actually, the zombie powder was typically given to people trying to fake their own death. So
Right.
I studied Marie Laveau as a child, voodoo queen. The zombie powder was administered and a death was faked. And when it wore off, the person would be witnessed alive and walking. And this is where the zombie spell or the zombie powder became famous. But they actually, necromancy, raising the dead, I can do that, somewhat, I guess. I mean, I can find anybody who has died, but in all my knowledge and all my days, I don't know of anyone actually reanimating a corpse in a physical sense. You can definitely manipulate the spiritual body and bring it forth so even others can see that spiritual body, but I don't know of any powers at all that can reanimate a corpse.
Well, see, now therein we have the stories of, and I know we don't like to, you don't like to, I don't like to, well, I do kind of like to, but for nefarious purposes, but we don't like to refer to the Bible so much because, I mean, it's not valid information, really, but it does have these stories of Jesus having raised people from the dead, and Jesus, it was, for the most part, trained by practitioners of the traditions we're a part of, so it may be a possibility, but I mean, we'd have seen it by now,
I think it's lost in translation. I myself have brought people out of comas and brought people off their deathbed as well as let them go. I highly doubt that the person was actually physically dead.
In the Bible? Yeah, maybe.
I don't buy into that. I think that they were probably near death, comatose, or, catatonic. And I believe he could have done it then. I do it all the time. But I really don't think that that is actually possible. I mean, this day and age with, electricity, you could perhaps jumpstart the body back. But I don't think that there's ever been a being alive that has that much power, the same amount of power as like a bolt of lightning. I don't think that is actual.
Now, being that the body is an electrical machine, in that respect, it is perfectly possible that somebody could generate that power, and we know that people could be capable of generating that sort of energy, but that's where things like spontaneous combustion happen. So at this point, maybe it's not possible, but it's plausible. It could become possible at some point.
I've had a premonition almost lifelong that that's actually going to be how I die, is spontaneous combustion. I can see the whole entire vision in my head as if I'm watching it.
I'm sorry. I mean to laugh at you.
What?
I said I don't mean to laugh at you combusting, but that was funny.
Sure, you know how angry I get and how much energy I have. I always wanted to study the known cases of spontaneous combustion and try to find out if those people were energy workers or if they were known to be, powerful magicians of any sort. But I always tell people of my crazy premonitions. That way, I just want to be right. I just want to have credit given. So if I ever blow up spontaneously,
we called it here on Soul Mechanics.
Right. I mean, I saw it first. Yeah. If I ever die of unknown fire, no one set my house on fire. That was just me. Just.
See, now I'm wondering because you said let's see if these people are magicians of any sort. And, if they were practitioners, if they were casters, you think they'd know how to manage that energy and, expel it properly. So it's unlikely that they'd have been learned in it, but maybe they just had an innate ability. But
sometimes you can't control it, and that's why it's, considered spontaneous. What if it was spontaneous to other people or to witnesses, but they in fact planned it? As I sit here, I look over there, and my lights have come on. my lights were not on before we started this call. I definitely did not turn them on purpose. I exercise my mind a lot, and I will, do that, but I have really slacked off since I burnt out 2 sets of them. But even the most powerful and skilled, practitioners of magic or energy workers, we are not always in control. There's so much energy. Any little piece of electricity around us is going to be charged up. We absolutely can't control that. I think we could have better luck controlling ourselves during like a lie detector test. But as far as preventing any spillage of your energy once it is so massive, I don't know anybody that can control it all the time.
Well, here's 2 things. Well, actually, no, 3 things we need to raise. One, with the lights and such, on 2 points. One, I think that I give you a bit of a charge there, don't I? 2, I think that we could learn to control it, but the problem is that we're not properly educated about this, that people kind of stole this technology from us, and we haven't been given, like, that what you hear about the secret mystery schools and such, they probably teach you how to do this properly. For the most part, that's where the Kundalini practices are going to have come from. And personally, I believe that it all links back to that Kundalini, that's probably cases of spontaneous combustion could very well be spontaneous activation of the Kundalini on like a massive scale. But I want to make a distinction here between what we think of as being casters and magicians, like illusion practitioners, like what's his name, Copperfield, and the other guy, David Blaine and such. These guys, they do pretty awesome tricks, and some of them I can't see how they pull them off, but and I myself, the other point about the lie detector, I know how to cheat the lie detector. I know how to, using that Kundalini impulse, I actually know how to burn it out. I've broken, when they try to monitor my blood pressure and shit, my heart rate, I can burn out their machines and they freak out. It's hilarious. But
I'm positive I can do it. When they put me on pulse monitors and heart monitors at the hospital, I sit and I exercise that ability, getting myself worked out, getting myself calmed down. I can make my blood pressure jump about 40 points in either direction.
Right.
So,
I can get my shit so high that they freak out. Like, they're looking at me like, how are you alive right now? And I'm like, I practice doing this all the time. But
now, Chris Angel, I'm highly clairvoyant. He's no parlor magician.
He's what?
There's no way. He is a parlor magician. I researched him extensively, trying to find his time of birth, because I knew if I was to look at his chart, I would have the truth about that man. Supposedly it's unknown. I think that's a plan. I'm sure his mother knows when he was born. I'm sure his original birth certificate can be obtained. I will tell you, all of the other magicians do it through, catching your attention over here while they're doing something over there. Everyone knows that's how magic works.
Sleight of hand.
The hand and parlor tricks. But this angel, I get those special vibes from him.
He does shit that I can't understand, and that gets me, because I can usually spot most of the tricks that the other guys do, but he does some shit.
His are not tricks. His is actual magical ability, and I don't want to make anyone upset, but when people like us are blessed with such power, we are also blessed with incredible pain, and I believe that is why his child suffered the way he did. I'm not sure if his child is still with us. I checked on it a while ago. But I honestly feel that that's why that happened. And I also have always felt that he is far more than a parlor magician.
Yeah, me too. I think that the pain that we go through, I think it's elemental, or at least fundamental in the construct of these abilities. I think that it's necessary. Somebody said something earlier on, I think it might have been Twitter or something. I was talking to someone bitching at the atheist folk about something, and somebody said that, what did they say? It was something about going through a lot of pain early on in your childhood, and it said that people who are overly sensitive likely haven't experienced real traumas and real struggles in their lives. And I was thinking that's probably correct. And with this victimization complex in play, it's like they're ill prepared to develop proper coping mechanisms. Something I wanted to say real quick, because I forgot it earlier, was that with the EKG and the electromagnetic pulse readings and the lie detector tests and such, if anybody's unfamiliar with the Baxter effect, it's an experiment that was done to see what the reactions plants would have, and they hooked them up to an EKG and a lie detector, and it turns out that not only do plants react to danger presented to them, but they react to your thought of presenting danger. Like, they know what you're going to do before you do it, and they have a threat response. So, and the plants in the world, we know that they're all connected. So right there is proof of a collective consciousness. I mean, that right there proves that there's an energy connecting everything that is alive, aware, and conscious. So
they have auras and everything, and it was published in Science probably 20 years ago.
Alright, so reintroducing us, welcome back to Soul Mechanics yet again. I do apologize, we got cut off due to lack of space because I'm an idiot, forgot to erase our last videos again. But we were in the process of talking about, we had discussed the Baxter effect and how there's energy connecting everything, and then we started talking about the Emoto experiments and the experiments with the plants, how the plants reacted to thoughts. Go ahead and recap on that for us, Norie, and I'm going to go grab something real quick.
Well, I was a child when my mother started talking to her plants because science had released the information saying that was very good for their growth and their health. I was once medicated for talking to my plants. They were the best in the neighborhood. Now, recently there's been an experiment done. It was, I think, at some sort of university where they had two very large plants, same age, same species, and they had little signs. One on the right said, bully me, and the one on the left said, give me positive reinforcement kind of comments. The one on the right that was supposed to be bullied withered, shriveled up, and pretty much died within a very short time. The number 2's in my head. I don't think it was 2 weeks. I think it might have been 2 months. It could have been 2 weeks. I don't know. Negative energy is very powerful, possibly more powerful than positive energy. But the one on the left that received positive reinforcement and niceties flourished. And that's factual. Plants and all other living beings, for the most part, do possess DMT, dimethyltryptamine or something, and they do have feelings. They can definitely sense our energies. I am not vegan. I do not promote the vegan lifestyle whatsoever, because it's actually doing more harm than good if you know anything about soy and plant estrogens. And I can actually feel the pain of a plant when it is broken or ripped out and its roots are exposed or hurt in any way. So energy is all this, and you don't have to be human to interpret, appreciate, or hate the energy. All living beings are sources of energy, and therefore they accept energy, and they use it, whether they use it to shrivel up and die or flourish. It all depends on what kind of energy you were giving them.
Did you? I couldn't hear you for a second there. I had to run in the other room. Did you talk about the water experiment?
No.
All right.
I'm just talking about plants.
So she's going to have told you about how the plants are affected by thoughts and intentions. If you look into the Emoto experiments, it's EMOTO. Emoto did experiments with water wherein he had people put intentions or thoughts, feelings, influences upon certain jars of water, and the molecules of the water would crystallize in a certain way depending on what was projected at it. Now, when you projected loving thoughts, kind thoughts, warm, healing thoughts or what have you, the molecules would crystallize in these perfectly geometric, just wonderfully beautiful patterns, like perfection. So, like the one that was called the chi of love, where people projected the feeling of love, which this is also going to speak to how you can control your own emotions. For Reds, that's particularly important for empaths. But the ones that they projected negative or hateful thoughts to the water, it didn't crystallize at all. It's like it just fell apart. It was like mush. It just looked horrid and disgusting. Like it had no construct whatsoever. Like it literally, the water just died and lost its construct altogether. Now, what you want to keep in mind there is that you are, in fact, 90% water. So if your thoughts can do that to water, what are your thoughts doing to you? And that's something that we got from the fourth sort of textbook I like to give people, initiates who are training with the initiative, people that are training under spotters. We give them the first three books of the Celestine Prophecy, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and the Conversations with God. And then the fourth thing would be What the Bleep Do We Know, is a kind of a documentary / fictional story movie that's just, it'll blow your mind. That movie will light your life up. Go ahead and check it out. There's even an extended version that goes on for like hours and hours and hours. It's pretty cool. It's a quantum version wherein like it's choose your own adventure. You hit things on the DVD on the remote, and it'll take you to different parts of the like cut takes that they took out of the original clip. Pretty awesome. But yeah, so this is proving in every way right then and there, which I'm not understanding where people like, especially atheists, are going to come up with this idea that there's no consciousness to life, there's no intelligent design, wherein they worship science as like in the atheist religious construct, they worship science, and science has proven that all things are in fact connected by a conscious intelligence that's alive and alert and aware that it responds to you in ways that you should expect for it to. So I really
I'm very kind to atheists. I have no hate for atheists. I have nothing but pity. I was slightly atheist for a couple years, and not in their defense, but, it's a stronger personality. You're on your own. There's no one to pray to. There's no one to absolve your sins. And because there's no one to absolve your sins, that's why you don't find atheists committing mass killings in any way, shape, or form. Most people I dated were atheists, and I attract that type of person for some reason. Probably because the religious people, I'm a big old sinner, with my mind and my methods. But I have never left a relationship and left an atheist behind. I think they are just needing a little bit of proof. The second they see some sort of spiritual type vision in my home or around me, not atheist anymore. So I think I would rather like to call them like those without proof, because they are very smart for the most part. I think that they would definitely believe as soon as they had some sort of concrete evidence, and that's usually, seeing with your own eyes.
Right, and that's the thing that I don't get. Like, the atheist community was actually the first community that the initiative approached to find a rep, and our rep ran away because we were in fact disproving it, and then they have this ideology wherein they think that religious folk are indoctrinated and that they feel threatened when you threaten their belief construct. They respond with a threat response, and that they fend it off with cognitive dissonance or in cognitive dissonance, wherein the atheists do exactly the same thing, and they'll retreat in most cases. I found, for me, maybe you have better luck, Norie, because you're an attractive female, but for me, they tend to retreat when I give them proof, but they don't. For the most part, the ones that I've run into, they tend to lean on the opinions and the ideologies of others that come before them, specifically philosophers for whatever reason, which is an oddity considering that philosophies are speaking to a nature of reality and life. They're speaking to a consciousness for the most part, but they worship evolution essentially as their God figure, and for the most part they see it as being a random, mindless happening. But there is a design to it, and there's no difference between the ideology of creation and the ideology of evolution. These are the same thing. Evolution is the process by which creation unfolds, and there is a guiding hand to it. We can see this, and all you have to do is open your eyes and look around. Synchronicity will show you every day. It will prove itself to you. You put it on the spot, the world will present itself to you. And I did the interview with Heathen Hour with the Shannon Q and Cologia for their channel, where we spoke about this, and they said that, well, don't you think that you might be placing meaning in things yourself? You know, when I spoke about the concept of value in matter and in happenings, they said that, don't you think you might be, placing meaning there? And I was like, yeah, that's the point.
I don't think atheists, I've been very intricately connected on both sides of the board my whole life, because I seem to be the mediator. Where atheists hate the God of the people, or the belief system, or the indoctrination, Christians or religious folk hate the atheists pretty much because all of their religious text says to meet them with a sword. You're supposed to kill those who won't convert or don't believe. So the atheists actually have a fear of the religious people. Highly religious is insanity, in medicine and in actuality. It is all nonsensical. The atheists don't trust. If they don't trust that there's a God, they surely don't trust all these people trying to kill them. And the religious folk, it's kind of like I've never met a religious person who understands the list of demons given in their religious text are all former gods.
Right.
They were all gods before, Jesus or whomever their text is implying the chosen one. That's all they are. And they that's really this level of fear that if you even look at those names, then you'll be possessed.
Right.
Go ahead, look them up. I clued into that when I saw that ISIS was a demon. I was like, what? And then I actually went and I researched it. Every one of those demons are just older gods. So of course you are forbidden to.
ISIS was in fact one of the threefold gods, the goddess figure that made up Israel, which was where their religion ultimately will have come from. That those three cults that came together, the cults of Isis, Ra, and El, or Isis, Re, and El, originally Re, the feminine, which became Ra, the masculine. And that's exactly true. And the outlook on it is so skewed, I find, when you actually get down and play on the battlefield here. It would seem
this is kind of off topic. I mean, I love our ability to go completely off topic. This is nothing like the video we just lost. However, I personally am a person who has pretty much mastered the spiritual realm and understanding of God. I can tell you how to get there. I have a view of creationism mixed with evolution, and I do believe we're divine creatures of God, and I don't believe that we evolved from the ape. If so, there want to be apes. But I was reading an article just released, I think, last week. Now, this supports creationism. They have found an older genome of DNA, everyone that is completing those DNA tests, they say that they don't use your samples, but they most definitely do. They have been computing, trying to find out where we all came from. Up until last week, we were all traced back to a Y, a Y chromosome, a Y gene. They called it, Adam. Well, they have actually traced to they just found an older Adam. But you can argue either side. They haven't quite figured it out yet. They don't know if the first Adam is actually able to be traced to the older Adam. But for the most part, they only have two. They have an Adam and they have an Eve. So we all do come from literally the same source.
Oh yeah, I mean we have to. There's no other possibility. But the two things that we need to know. What the fuck was that? Two things that we need to remember to note is
the power. You see the power?
The DMT that you mentioned, there's DMT and everything. Remember, we want to do a video on that, so we'll get that down here so that we remember that. Also, mitochondrial Eve and everything behind that. Mitochondria is an exceptionally interesting topic that I'd like to touch upon. But what I was saying about the atheist, though, is that the view is totally skewed. When you get down on the battlefield and you see it playing out, people would tend to think of the religious folk as being like the holy people and the light, the working for God and whatnot, and the atheists being like the evil kind of, almost like the witches of our modern culture for the most part. But when you get down in play on the battlefield and you see how the vision actually works, how people see it, the atheists are the good guys that are fighting for truth and acknowledging the reality of science and figuring things out, while the religious people are really demonized, and nowadays they're fighting a losing battle at this point. And honestly, I'm happy for it. I think that we do need to work on kind of getting rid of that creationism. Obviously, that doesn't work. I mean, the earth is not 6,000 years old, and we weren't made from pieces of clay on the ground. But I don't buy the concept of evolution either. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. If you really look at it, evolution doesn't work without intervention of that's in place. Something had to step in and manipulate the genetics at some point, which brings us back to the whole ancient alien thing with the ancient.
We're going to the same place, kind of. Are you aware that, I know you know that nothing in the Christian or Catholic text is genuine. But do you know that it is the same exact story with certain names and places omitted and replaced that the Sumerian text?
Yeah. And the
all talked about aliens, and I never believed in aliens because I have this ego about me. If it's real, I'll know it. I had a spiritual person. He claims he's a shaman. He did guide me on a meditation to a place I've never been before. It was pretty much the universal energy, and these faces were coming out at me, and an alien came out at me, and also kind of like a lion that was like a stone face came out, and it kind of told me that the aliens are, they probably did kind of start our life here, and the stone lion that kind of came out, it reminded me of Egypt and Africa, which is very much, the focal point of our being. So
there's a guy called Shaman Oaks. I hate when people say that. Damn it, I just did it. Named Shaman Oaks. Don't say people are called things. People are people. They're named. They're not called. But anyway, this dude is named Shaman Oaks. He does a channel on YouTube, and he told this almost the same story where he saw that. He saw the same faces and the stone lion precisely.
Really?
In a DMT experience. Now, that's what we talk about when we talk about aliens. If we talk about aliens having come here and like manipulated the genetics, that's just, they're people from other planets. They're just people from other planets. But real aliens is what people are encountering through these DMT experience. That's alien to our understanding, whatever these things are, and everybody experiences them. There is a reality to it for sure. We don't know what they are, but the Remnants program is essentially designed to kind of explore that avenue firstly. Amongst all, I mean, we explore everything, we investigate everything now, but all the life's mysteries. But that was the first one that we were looking into, was making contact with these aliens that people experience in DMT terms. But yeah, he saw that. He saw the stone lion. Exactly, he said it reminded him.
Really?
Think of like Incan.
There was a third figure, and for some reason I can't remember it. I think it was like a grouping of people, like standing like soldiers, and I couldn't tell if they were male or female. My mind is really vivid with the alien and then the stone lion. I have no idea why I saw that, but I was led to a place beyond the universal energy that I usually frequent to do my controlling of my life. And, you know, when you go beyond, you're actually going back in time, and I'm led to believe that I was being shown our origins.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of that. I mean, everybody tells this story, like you said, the Sumerians told it with the Anunnaki, the Hindu Rig Vedas tell the story of the wars in heaven with the Vimanas and whatnot. I mean, Native Americans talk about the star people. Somebody came here from elsewhere. It's obvious. I mean, if you dismiss that, the evidence is everywhere. We have carvings of what people describe as being aliens in walls that we just found, you know, buried deeper than we thought was even, we didn't even think our history went back that far. And now we found places like Göbekli Tepe that have carvings of alien faces in the walls and shit. I mean, it's real. Yes, there were aliens here, but I don't like to call them aliens because I think they're just people from other planets. But
you know, this is interesting. My grandfather disappeared for about 3 days once, and he wasn't really the type to always abide by his marital vows, but he was the type to be like, yeah, so what? I'm drunk and I'm home. You know, but he disappeared for like 3 days once, and he swore that he was abducted by aliens. And my father tells the same story, and my whole entire life that I knew my father, he wouldn't be in a house with houseplants. He said that the houseplants were aliens and they were like spying on us. And he was of confound mind. You know, he had Asperger's like me, and some anxiety and OCD. But he, you know, he was a CNC programmer, you know, high mind. And he swore up until his dying day, you know, I'm pretty sure I was told to take a couple plants out of his hospital rooms at times, because he swore that, you know, they were, you know, alien species that were watching us and sending back information.
Terrence McKenna used to say that the mushrooms were aliens, that they were, he said they were aliens masquerading as drugs, I believe is precisely what he said. I love that. I'm going to check this. I can still hear you. You can go on.
I find it interesting, that thing I'm always talking about, how you're completely unaffected or, you know, unbonded to things that aren't like you, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you only notice things like you. I've experimented with psilocybin mushrooms on several occasions, and I was always completely unaffected by them. So I've also been called an alien by most people, and Palladian. You know, there was a group on Facebook that like tried recruiting me, saying that I was definitely Palladian, and I didn't even know that term. I know I meditated all day long on, you know, 12/21/2012, because I thought I was gonna be beamed to my home. So I do believe in aliens now because I was shown that. But
there's a dude who runs the MUFON, or used to run the MUFON in California, who he coined the term strange attractors. He said there were certain people that would just attract these kind of events, these occurrences. And one of the, I think, actually it was my very last student that I had, Special K, she and I used to go down to the lake to practice, and just generally afterwards we'd sit around and we'd watch the sunset and shit. And every time we went there, we saw lights over the lake floating around in strange patterns and shit every single time. And she's a real strange fellow. People that are involved with the initiative, you'll know what I'm talking about.
My whole entire life, everywhere I lived, I remember my mother yanking me out of bed, like sometime between 12 and 2 at night. She had one of my dad's rifles that had a scope on it, and she was so positive that there were these UFOs behind my house towards my window. Everywhere I've lived, the people I have lived with, have insisted that there were UFOs. There was a sighting in this town across the border into Ohio. My ex loaded my kids up to go and find this hovering light that was just going up and down, and it was in our atmosphere. It wasn't up in the stars. And for some reason, I have always shrugged that off. I don't know what you guys are talking about, that's crazy. But I did experience what they would call sleep paralysis once, and it was the night I was near death when a person who I identified as a living God literally saved my life. It was a horrifying experience. I felt tubes go in, a whole bunch of tubes, black tubes, and my mouth was stretched so far, and I also felt stuff inserted anally, and it was not comfortable. And I will never believe that was a hallucination or anything else other than what this man said. He said that his aliens had come to check on me to make sure I was worthy of the service he performed. And I have very sensitive skin. All around here, my skin was red and cracked for a couple of weeks afterwards because, I'm allergic to everything. It was probably some sort of latex that they shoved down my throat. And I seriously, I had that reaction. So I do believe in aliens. Maybe I am one. Maybe we all are. But, there's definitely been some weird stuff that...
We were just talking about the sleep paralysis and the shadow people is one of the topics that was raised up. We just brought a new guy into the Remnants program who's talking about that. I think he's going to start raising queries about that. But I've had one experience with the sleep paralysis where I woke up and I felt someone stepping on and off of the bed, and I could see out of the corner of my eye, I could see the shape of them, and it looked like a young man older than me wearing a long coat, a very particular long coat, and he had just the shape of him and the way that he looked, it was very familiar. And then this light floated in through the window and hovered along the wall and came up the ceiling and came into me, and I woke out of it. And then later on, I got that same jacket. A few years later, I got that same long coat, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was like, that was me. That was me on the bed, stepping on and off the bed, and it felt in my mind like he was making a decision whether to come with me or leave me behind or something like that. Like he was stepping on and off the bed, making it, and I could feel the bed depressing. So I think that was an instance of me, a future me coming back and kind of planting values, because that's something that I work with, that I've been working on. It's a hypothetical practice. It's something we can't say for certainty, but I have been practicing for a long while with what I believe is actual time travel, and I intend to prove that is possible. And I actually think that it's closely connected with this Mandela effect, which is what we left off talking about. We only have a little bit of time left. Do you want to talk about that really quick?
Yeah, I took my little notes here because I have never been able to remember this. Okay, if I can't remember something, it's usually not completely accurate. So maybe one day I'll challenge this. We can have a little project. Now, the Mandelas, they are set to give us certain feelings. And what I have found, to be the most healing is actually when they are in the shapes of sacred geometry. Now, there's all different types of sacred geometry, right from our ley lines to, all these different flowers. But mainly, a lot of people don't understand, if you look at a representation of our chakras, there's these little mandalas. What those are is the pictures of, the sound reverberation.
Yeah,
so, like,
we were talking about, you're talking about mandalas, and yeah, you're right about that. It's the geometry of the sound coming off of it, or creating it. But I was talking about the Mandela effect. Are you familiar with that? People are all over the world, like half of the world's divided now with people who remember the past differently. They remember so many different instances of things that have somehow changed, like the spellings of certain things, the words of songs. So I've noticed a lot of movies that will release they'll release a day, and I'll remember having seen them years and years ago, and I remember people dying that are still alive. A lot of people. It began with on Coast to Coast with Art Bell. Somebody commented that something about Nelson Mandela having died in prison, and of course, as we remember it, Nelson Mandela did not die in prison. And Nelson Mandela lived, a long, fruitful life after getting out of prison and became the leader of his people. But I actually do remember Nelson Mandela having died in prison. I remember watching not a documentary, but a movie that was made about his death in prison myself. So that's where the divide happened, where people started remembering things differently. Was with half of the world remembers Nelson Mandela having died in prison, half of the world remembers him going on and living, and then we started finding all kinds of inconsistencies all over the place. As though something had changed.
Did they check the news sources in those areas? Because, the ones who, the ones who win the wars write the history books. Right. But, I think that's a little bit connected to deja vu. And we probably need to pick that up, because I do understand what deja vu is. Science has one explanation. I have the real explanation. I had never really heard of the Mandela effect before. It is very interesting. I mean, I would always do my own research, because myself, I don't remember everything, the same as someone else. A lot of stories are different. I thought I remember Nelson Mandela being released after an incredibly long hunger strike, and I don't remember him dying in prison. I remember him being.
A lot of people do. I remember seeing that movie like that. That was a big deal to me when I heard that. I was like, Nelson Mandela died. Are you serious? Now I remember Bill Cosby died. I remember Bill Cosby died during his court. I saw that on the news. It could have been a dream, I guess, if you want to say that. It could have been like a really vivid dream, but I remember that.
Well, any person who suffers borderline psychotic disorder or borderline personality disorder in our country here in America, you will always run the risk of getting your dreams confused with reality or memories. And if you're a clairvoyant person, if you have any lines going horizontally across, that light's bad, across your moon mount, you're a traveler. And it's very hard when you have flashbacks and flash forwards. You don't know what a memory is. You don't know what a dream is. You don't know if it's precognitive until it happens. That is pretty much what deja vu is. And I would say that, a lot of people, a lot of people, there could have been a collective force so concerned about Nelson Mandela. They were travelers, because it's very, very common, and people don't understand that anyone who has deja vu is a traveler. There could have been a collective force that saw him die in prison, and then in physical space here, they took actions to create a different outcome. And when the outcome happens, you know, they're unaware of it, or what they know, what they saw becomes their memory, when in actuality, they saw that in the future, they were traveling astrally, and they took action to make things happen differently.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is likely what happened, because I've actually, with the time travel thing, as I stated, it's hypothetical and it can't be proven, and it's something I don't really like to talk about because it makes me come across crazy, and I haven't given you guys the values that are necessary yet for you to understand it from my perspective of trying to get there. But I have provided myself proof that I've done it. I have actually proven it to myself from my own perspective. Provided myself evidence of it. And with the deja vu thing, that's a whole other topic I'd like to talk about in another video, because there are some really cool theories regarding that are not precisely the same as what you're saying, but pretty close. And I believe they do fit together. But we're gonna have to clip this one. Do you want to do another one on deja vu?
Yeah, sure. That's good. I got to get my dragon out of the window.
All right, let's clip this one. I'm gonna put it all together and get it up, and then I'll get right back to you. So, thank you all for.
I will just make sure, you know, get my attention somehow.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. See you next time.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Now that I